Here they come.
Great.
Jory, this is the part where we watch everybody get their audio set up and their video set up, and we just do witty banter back and
Great.
forth. So, are you feeling witty today?
Okay. Sure. Why not?
Look at that. All
Oh
right,
man,
we crossed the 100 mark. Here we go. And climbing. Come on in, folks.
amazing. Hi everyone.
I'll let them log on a little bit more, and then we'll start some fun and games. How's the Jory? How's the weather over there on the East Coast?
It is a beautiful sunny day here in Brooklyn, New York.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, we had a terrible storm yesterday and today is just beautiful. You can probably see some of the sunlight coming through my
I
window right
see
here.
gorgeous rays of sunshine coming
Yeah.
through. Well, it must be topsy-turvy day because I am here in the Phoenix, Arizona area today where it is overcast and drizzling.
Oh my gosh, that's
It
really,
is.
that's funny. Oh man,
We swapped weather.
sorry about that.
All righty. Well, it looks like we got lots of folks in attendance today. How about this? While everyone's getting their audio and video all set up, we like to have some fun, maybe, and we'll ask a question for people to answer in the chat. Gang, if this is your first time joining us for the Pragmatic Institute Product Chat Series, welcome. If this is not your first time, if you're coming back again, doubly welcome. So glad that you came back. Let us sort out a couple things. You will notice at the bottom of your Zoom window that you have both a chat box, as usual in Zoom, but for today's purposes, you also have a Q&A box. Take this moment to look down and find the Q&A button. That's the one we're going to use if you have questions later, specifically for our guest today. That's where you will put those. But you will also have the normal chat box. That is where you will put witty banter to each other, comments, like bald jokes, whatever you want to stick in there. That's where that goes in the chat box. And how about right now? Let's ask a question for everybody to answer in the chat box. All of you, will you please answer for me? What is a product you believe will see great growth in 2024? A product you've got in mind, maybe something you have experience with, you believe will show great growth in 2024. And just for kicks, let's see what comes up here. Copilot, good one. Chat GPT. Deb got it in first. You know, 6 people are going to say that. Oh,
Yeah.
Chat GPT. There it is. Deb was first, just making it obvious because she was quick on the fingers there. Chat GPT, cyber trucks. Yes. Another Copilot, big one. Jory, you see any in there that surprise you?
No, I mean, political yard signs, yeah. Ozempic, yeah.
Political yard sign business. Oh man, let's get in
Canva
early
is
on that
definitely
one.
one. Yeah.
All right, good answers. Folks, it is so good to have you with us. So you found, obviously, the chat box. Good job with that. Obviously, if you've got questions you would like me to toss over to the guest today, stick those in the Q&A. Housekeeping items. Yes, we are recording the session today. Everyone registered will get a copy of the presentation, so you can put your pencils down and just listen and soak it in. That's the way to do that. And I think that is all the housekeeping stuff. It's time to get to the fun part. Jory, let's do an intro of you. This is the part where I'm going to read your bio and you can just sit there and take it. Just be embarrassed. That's okay. Let us embarrass you.
Great.
I am Eddie Gordon, courseware designer at Pragmatic Institute. Welcome to another Pragmatic Institute Product Chat webinar. And with me today, we are so glad to have is Jori Bell. Jori has over a dozen years of experience launching products and leading successful cross-functional product teams, while driving efficiency throughout various sized product organizations. She's worked for brands like Audible, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and can now also add professor to her incredible resume as she is currently teaching product to master students at Cornell Tech. We are delighted to have you with us. Jori, how was that? Too embarrassing or pretty good? Feel
I was
good?
able to stomach it. Thank you,
You
though.
stomached it. Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely listed some companies and products that I have personal experience with, so I'm excited to talk to you about some of that. Today's session is we're calling just a fireside chat. That means we've got a bunch of pre-submitted questions, but the majority of the questions will come from our devoted audience. So listen up, gang. This is your chance to toss those product-related questions into the Q&A box. I will keep an eye on those and toss them over to Jori. But while you're thinking of your first questions, I've got some here that I can kick us off with. How about let's start with sort of just an umbrella subject question here, Jori. We're going to use terms a lot today like market-based, customer-focused. Just go ahead and give us your sort of theory on customer-focused approaches, what that is, why that might be the best way to approach the product world.
Yeah, I think, I'm of the belief that as a PM and as a product development team, taking a customer first approach, you read about it, you know it, but I see it so often not used in practice. And so I think one of the things that I encourage students and I encourage people I'm coaching is to really come back to the customer whenever you feel stuck on what you're doing, how to prioritize, what's next. Really just starting in the customer pain points. So that's kind of like one of my biggest, most obvious philosophies. I think that's what a product-led mentality and methodology really looks like, is being customer obsessed, but really empathetic to what those customers need, whether they're stating it or whether they're not stating it. There's a reason why Amazon's principles has customer obsession as like one of their number one principles. It's real. I think more often than not, product people get really stuck in the cool technology or what they think their customers need. And so for me, a lot of my coaching and teaching is about pulling people out of what they've fallen in love with and making sure that what they're building is really oriented around customer pain points.
You touched on something interesting there. You have to pull them out of what they have fallen in love with. I mean, when you explain to somebody this customer-based approach, it seems so reasonable. Obviously, we want to make stuff that they need, that solves problems for them. Therefore, they'll want to buy it. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Why then do people not employ it everywhere? Why hasn't it just taken off and everybody does it and it's just common sense now?
I think people, product managers and people generally think they know what other people need.
Oh.
I think people sometimes think that their problems are other people's problems, and sometimes they certainly are. I think that's why people found companies and go after something. But I think sometimes people spend a lot of time putting a lot of energy into technical solutions, and the thought of unwinding that or building something totally different is scary. There's so many different reasons why people divert from the customer. But I think the best product development teams continue to carry the voice of the customer throughout that whole development process, even when things are built, even when that means pivoting. Because at the end of the day, if you're not building something that someone's going to use, it doesn't really matter. No matter how cool that technology is.
Yeah, hard lesson to learn. But
Hard
guys, it's so
lesson.
cool. Why don't you want to buy it? All right, we've got some questions coming into the Q&A box over here, Jori. Let's see what we've got. Question from our friend Anonymous. Anonymous is starting with the hard questions here. What
Okay.
are some pitfalls of being customer obsessed? So we've obviously talked about the benefits and why it makes so much sense and why this is a great business move. Can you think of any drawbacks or hindrances to an interesting way to phrase that, being customer obsessed? That's not, maybe that's even more than customer focused, right?
Yeah.
Customer obsessed. Can this be taken too far? Is there a risk there?
Absolutely. I think, I've worked on teams and worked with teams that will kind of bend whatever direction the wind is blowing for our customer. And I think the reality is, and the role of a product manager is to empathize and listen, but be able to represent it at an aggregate level. So you don't want to get into a situation where you're actually just building based on, a subset or one customer and what they're saying. So it's about being able to distill what's really happening, hearing that on the ground, but then pulling out those themes, and taking that information and informing your product roadmap, informing your strategy, without feeling, the visual that's coming to mind is that thing at the gas station that's like flowing in the wind, like the airman. And I
The gas
think if,
station guy, yeah.
yeah, and I think if you are constantly just reacting to smaller, data points and like, smaller groups of customers and not really doing that aggregation, that's a pitfall. And then you just end up like building for your one-off customers and clients, and it's a nightmare.
Right,
So you don't
right.
want to be, in this case, you don't want to be the airman at the gas station.
There's got to be somebody stick in the chat. What are those things called? There's
Yeah,
got
what
to
is
be
it
like an
called?
industry name for
I
the
love
air
it.
blowing
I love all the
at
memes
the
with
car
it, but
lots.
like that's the visual that's coming to mind is you're just like going in every direction. And so I air
Air
dancers.
dancers. Michael got it. There it is. Air dancers.
But
Don't
I
be
think
air dancers,
that's
guys.
the big risk, is that you spend too much time in that. And I think there's a way your role as a PM is to really take that information and aggregate it and make it usable.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So don't not customer obsessed. We're doing this scientifically. Find the aggregate, find the average, right?
Yeah.
Question here from Hridish. What are your thoughts on capital planning process? What are the best practices for enterprise companies to adopt in capital planning? Do you have enough to go on there, Jori?
No, I actually want to know what they
Capital
mean by
planning.
capital
Stick
planning.
it. Yeah.
We're talking about like revenue.
Harish, stick that over in the chat if you would like us to get more detailed on that one. We're going to need a little bit more on that one. How about here is a question from we're getting into the AI already. We can't do a webinar these days without jumping on
I
AI.
figured, yeah.
That is the topic of the year. John says everyone thinks all products need AI now in order to compete, but what are the questions we should answer before giving in to the siren song of AI? Is it a panacea? Is it going to solve all of our product questions? What are some things we should consider before we start creating our own chat bots for our products?
I've said this a lot because I looked at a lot of projects this semester that were like, we're building AI. And
Yes.
my response is AI is a technology, it's a solution, it's not a problem that you are solving. And so that is like the number one thing. I don't think the question is like, how do we use AI? AI is one option that can be advantageous for you when you're building out products, but it's not the thing that you build. So I would offer that reframe right off the bat, that we so quickly, and I see so many people quickly jumping into, should I use AI or should I not? There's perhaps a world where you need that, but that shouldn't be your starting place. Your starting place is, who is your customer, what is their problem, and what is the most efficient way for you to help test and then solve some of their problems. Personally, I haven't seen AI be the cheapest, most efficient way to test. But I mean, I've seen it in some regard with ChatGPT, people like seeing if AI is something that they can use, but I want to offer that reframe. It's not, should we use AI? It's, AI is an option to solve your customer problems and test, but it shouldn't be your starting point.
Right. And you actually touched on two different use cases for AI in the product world. The one being using it to do research for us, to help
Of
us
course.
do our product roles.
Mm-hmm.
And then another big trend, of course, is implementing AI or a chatbot in our digital products, whatever those are, thinking that nobody's going to want anything that doesn't incorporate AI these
Mm-hmm.
days. Do you see any hazards to just slapping a chat bot on whatever our digital product is these days? Is there a better or worse way to implement such things?
I think, Chat GPT and what they have available right now to use to build your own tools is really useful for like quick testing. So I think if your core value is about the deep research and generative thinking that AI enables, then I think that's something to explore. But I don't think you should just be throwing chatbots at everything because that's what everyone's doing and that's where everyone wants to invest.
Right.
I mean, the other thing that comes to mind, I think about a lot is like chatbots have been around for forever. And I know that this is different, but like the concept has always been there. And so I would just kind of caution people from just like jumping in and like very quickly saying we need to build AI. Because a lot of the times you can do a lot we've existed a long time without AI, and it's just not necessarily like the solution just because it's buzzy right now. I think a lot about it, how, Web3 and NFTs, it was just like, this is going to be, a Web3 thing, NFT thing. And it didn't really make sense a lot of the time. So just, I would encourage you not to fall into that trap of how do I use AI? I don't think that's the first question.
Yeah. Or just like any other feature, do your user tests, do your
Mhm.
market research, see if it's actually solving a problem that your core target market has, and
Mhm.
then maybe implement. But yeah, as you say, we existed a long time without AI. Hopefully we will still exist a long time with
Yeah, I mean, who
AI,
knows?
right? Here is a question from Rhonda. Rhonda says, can you talk about effective ways to get product and marketing teams more aligned? How to ensure marketing is aware of product roadmaps early rather than later? Thank you very much. Sounds personal, Rhonda. We'll see what we can do here for you. What do you think, Jori?
It sure does. I like to think of this as my bread and butter. As a PM, you are, yes, responsible for a roadmap, responsible for a development team, but you're also responsible for buy-in and not just influencing, but really getting your stakeholders collaboratively involved in everything that you're doing. It's hard to know exactly like what your situation is, but whenever I start on a new team or if I have a new project, bringing everyone in to set expectations early on with what roles each team member is going to play is really helpful. I like using a go-to-market strategy or like a RACI model to kind of start to define the different elements and bring stakeholders like marketing into the fold. I'm trying to think of something more specific that I can give you, but I think ultimately, whenever I build a product brief, sometimes even before a product brief, when I'm just in discovery mode, I love bringing in my stakeholders like sales, marketing, legal, like maybe some stakeholders you wouldn't necessarily have guessed, but I like bringing those people into the fold to come with me on that journey, so that they understand what I'm building and why. And so hopefully, if you have that kind of collaborative relationship, when you are building out a roadmap and negotiating, you have people that you've built really long-standing relationships with to influence and collaborate on both marketing and product initiatives.
Yes, good. All right. You mentioned a few other departments. Sales is a big one that I know we get questions for frequently. There are probably
Yeah.
some in here that I just haven't read yet, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you about the relationship between product and sales. Sometimes there's a little bit of tension there. Any advice on doing market research visits with prospective customers? Should you or shouldn't you bringing salespeople along on product visits or market research visits? Should you or shouldn't you? Is there a better or a worse way to do that? How can the product team and the sales team work best together?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent it's possible, whenever you can cross-pollinate each other's areas, the better. I think when you have a salesperson come into, let's say, a UX research session and hear what users are saying, or when I can go along on a sales call with someone on the sales team, the level of empathy I can develop for my coworker, not as a product manager, but for my coworker and what their experience is, builds trust. It really strengthens the relationship with your coworker. And so I think there's a lot of value in being able to tag along both ways, in that experience. So that, when you are building a product roadmap or they're building out a sales pipeline, you each have a trusting buy-in to really like know exactly what the other's priorities are. So yeah, like in a perfect world, I think going along on sales calls, I loved bringing in some of our really cross-functional people that I worked with in even, product discovery sessions where we'd be like thinking about what problems are we solving, having a salesperson in there, having a lawyer in there, having a trust and safety person in there. Their brains work differently than a product brain. And so I think the more diversity of functions you can bring in and cross-pollinate on is only going to make your development process stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. More ways of thinking only makes the end product better. Any hazards or tripwires to be aware of in that relationship? For instance, you're going together to meet with a potential customer, and there are a couple things from both the product side and the sales side that you wouldn't want to say, or that you just needed to be aware of. Any cautions for us in that respect if we're going to go on visits together with the sales team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about being really prepared and having a plan and
Okay.
at a baseline having a conversation. So like you never want to just tag along on a sales call and just start spewing questions, at the end when perhaps that's interfering with the salesperson's strategy.
Yeah.
So put a doc together, align like here's how my sales strategy goes. Like where are the ways that I can plug in as a PM? I have these 5 questions. Should I ask them before? Should I ask them at the end of the call? Should I set up a separate session? Should I, like really negotiating that sales call strategy together, having a conversation, perhaps practicing it, perhaps funneling them into your own product research funnel where you can actually take time separately, but really aligning on who's doing what, almost writing it out like a script.
Wow.
I always like being over prepared rather than just kind of winging it. I find that those are some of the strongest teams who really delegate and identify the roles and responsibilities up front.
Beautiful. Interesting. In the chat, we have a couple people that are listening to our discussion right now about the sales department, but they're mentioning maybe some similar issues with the operations department.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Mm-hmm.
you have any experience there, Jory? Maybe
Sure do.
some
Sure.
advice or cautions if trying to partner with the operations department.
Sure do. Operations, customer support. I think you always have to remember that operations and customer support are a lot of times on the front lines. So that you have sales trying to
Mm-hmm.
pull people in, and then you have customer support being there on the customer's worst day. So like they are the one, like think like really thinking about that experience and like what they're advocating for. And I think again, it's really about building the right kind of relationship and the right kind of rituals. So if you have a house on fire or a product on fire, the operations team is just going to be reactive and throwing things at you. And so I think it's up to you to build, as a PM, to build the right rituals and space for that operations or customer support team to feel heard and proactively, built for. It's a really hard tension, especially when you go into a new organization. I've experienced that where there's people who've been there for 10 years and they're like, this is just the way things are. And so
Right.
it's a lot of relationship building work, and just kind of giving people the space to feel heard and seen, more often than not. Anyone can do
Absolutely.
that. It's not a product person. It's just, what are you struggling with? And that's when I start a new role or I start working with a new operations or customer support team. What are your biggest challenges? Like, where do you think I could be most helpful? And just being curious goes a really long way.
I love that. Yeah, lots of comments in the chat there about let's just remember that both departments have different immediate goals.
Great.
And it makes so much more sense. You won't be confused about the things that they do or say if you realize you have slightly different immediate goals. But of course, we're all in the same company, which means we have the same overall arching goal as well. We're
Yeah.
all on the same team. Same
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
Here is a great question from Krasimir. Krasimir says, how do you filter out noisy customer pain points with low value? So maybe you hear some customer feedback from some of your noisy 80%, and you've heard this one a few times, but maybe it's considered low value. How, first of all, how do you filter all these, this input as it's coming in? And then how do you decide which of those to chase and validate?
Yeah, I think I'd even go back a step further and understand and ask, do you have a good sense of who your customers are in the different segments, and what does a
Good.
low
Yeah.
value customer look like?
Okay.
Because I think low value doesn't necessarily mean the content, but it could be the type of customer. Maybe it's a customer that is just a lower ticket customer that's paying, versus a higher ticket customer. It could be on volume, it could be, it can be on type of customer, it could be on type of offering. So I think being able to filter is about really knowing your customer base really well. And then I think once you do, natural prioritization and filtering starts to come into the fold.
Yeah. Beautiful. There we go. Here is a question from Chad. Chad says, how have you typically navigated situations where teams are flying down the I know what the customers want path and get them back onto the customer first mindset? Okay, so obviously a cultural problem within the company here, and maybe this isn't just happening in your team. Maybe this is happening everywhere. It's you addressed it earlier. This idea that we know what the customers want. It's what we want. It's the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make that cultural shift in the company towards a product-led mindset, a customer-based approach, if they're already rooted in the idea that they know what's best?
This is where I like to lean back on, how do you know that? Can you show me
Oh,
some data where you know that? And so I think this can be tricky because this could be your CEO for all we know.
that was going to be my
Um,
follow-up question is, okay, how do you
which
ask that without getting punched in the face?
which I think there's a delicate way to do that. But I think it's a valid question for most people in the company. Like, what do you know about the customer, about the market, about the solution that gives you that kind of confidence? And framing it more out of a place of curiosity rather than combativeness, I think is really helpful. So, I'm really curious to understand what gives you that conviction. What have you learned? What data are you looking at? What kind of calls are you sitting on? I love to get that information so I can really understand your point of view. And so I think that would be like my number one thing. Not saying give me the data, but help me understand why you feel this way.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm new to the project, new to the company. Maybe they've been doing this forever and you're brand new, but I think leaning into that curiosity around the data to understand why they have that point of view is a really nice place to start without it being demanding
Yeah. And then,
or
I
getting
mean,
punched in the face.
even yeah, hopefully worst case scenario, right? The next step, the how do you create an environment where it's okay for somebody to pull back, where it's okay, you challenge them. Okay, do we have any data to support that is a problem that needs solving? Okay, what if they don't? What if they got caught in the classic trap and they were just pushing through a feature that they think they need, but they don't have the data to back it up? Man, how do you create an atmosphere where it's okay for them to say, you're absolutely right. Let me go look into that and then I'll get back to you. I
Well,
mean,
I think,
that takes a
yeah,
humility on their part, but
totally. But I think I like to think that as a PM, you can lean on that this is my job. Like, it is my job to
oh,
understand the customer. So, whether I'm new or whether I'm not new, I'd love to sit on some sales calls. I'd love to have some conversations. This is my job to have empathy for the customer, to be customer focused. And there might be something I'm missing here because you feel such conviction. Can I see where you're getting this information? Can I have some conversations? Can I get some access to the reports you're looking at? Can I have that space? Because this is really what I'm supposed to do. I'm the voice of the customer. So I think you can really lean on almost kind of framing it as like, I want to get better at my job and be that voice of the customer rather than you're not doing your job and you don't know what you're talking about. It's just radical curiosity, I think.
I love that. I love that idea. Help me get better. Let's talk about what you're seeing that I'm not. I'd love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
and then if it's like no, then you're dealing with a different issue.
Okay.
But
That never
ultimately, like
happens.
you're all on one team. And if someone is very steadfast in their beliefs and you want to understand that more, hopefully they would be open to sharing more about why they feel that way.
Yes. Beautiful.
Mhm.
Question from Don. Don says B2B selling into a large multinational requires the coordination of multiple departments: IT, marketing, security, engineering, in order to gain consensus. Okay. What approaches are you aware of that work best? So we're talking about getting the buy-in from multiple departments, and we've been talking about this a little bit, but
Mhm.
gaining consensus amongst such varied departments with slightly different goals. We're sort of talking about establishing a company-wide culture of customer based research. What can we do to sort of publicize the approach amongst the entire company?
Yeah, I mean, I think, thinking like a PM, what is like the MVP way to do that? Because I think saying we're going to change the company culture and do this is like a big thing to bite off. But what I might recommend for someone who's dealing with the situation is there a project or a product or a program that you can incubate and try some new ways of working? So instead of saying we're going to like flip everything, what if you were to experiment with a slice of a feature or a product and say, hey, I want to try some different program and project management ways of working to figure out how to collaborate better with all of these different departments. Um, I think as a product manager, I've done so much program and project management. I've been really fortunate to also work with some of the most talented program and project managers, but when you don't have that, a lot of that falls on the product manager. And so if I were to be landing at a company and really trying to shift that culture, I would figure out what's a really nice project to incubate a more collaborative way of working with, go from front to back, and then start to evangelize that a little bit more at the company. So don't try and bite off the whole company, but like take a piece of it and try some more rigorous product or project and program management to see what works and what doesn't work. And the other thing I like to say is I always like offering up as experimentation rather than we're doing this forever. So, hey, for this project, I'd actually love to experiment with weekly check-ins, maybe it's daily stand-ups, having different point people to contribute to different pieces of the project, and just seeing like what happens there.
Yes, I love the idea of starting small and sort of the yeast of the project. Let it grow throughout
Yeah.
the company. Is there a particular type of project that might be best for that sort of teaser that would get everybody interested in the approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's newer initiatives. I think it's really hard
Okay.
to do when you're like working on a core product where there's like a lot of deep-seated, embedded historical information and behaviors and habits. So I think anytime you're spinning up something new or spinning up something that feels adjacent perhaps to the core business could be a really nice slice to try it with.
Very cool. All
Mhm.
right. Here is a question that I loved. How do you balance the need for rapid and continuous improvement of your product with maintaining a positive user experience in this market-based approach? So, everybody needs to constantly improve and make sure that we're cutting edge, top of the line, but you don't want to disrupt the user experience with constant updates and new features that they may or may
Mhm.
not need. Is there a way to walk that line, keeping the users that are having a good time and loving it, but also staying ahead of the game and making sure that you're ahead of the competition?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think these have to be at odds. And I think the other thing that I want to emphasize is that a positive user experience isn't always about a perfect UX. A positive user experience, and I think you're asking about this, is about supporting really strong functionality and making a customer feel supported every step of the way. And so I think when there's a lot of need and pressure to continuously improve and like level up the UI or the UX or the design or add a chatbot in, whatever it is, it doesn't always have to be at the sacrifice of the customer experience. So for me, I think I've always learned that it's a hard line to walk when you're trying to move really quickly and also trying to preserve the customer experience and make sure that what they have is really good. But I don't think they necessarily have to be at odds. Like, I don't think it's either or.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
There is a question here from Yogesh. What do you think about product-led growth where the company goes to market with a service? Okay, so product-led growth in maybe a SaaS environment versus another physical product. Any differences in the approach there, or is it the same no matter what your product is?
It's really interesting. This past year, I launched a coaching service, and it was a really different experience than actually launching like a product, like
Yeah.
on a web page. I'm like, I am doing this service. And for me, it was like a really great experiment to see like how do they differ, what feels different about those things. And to me, I didn't feel like they were drastically different. I think it's all in the language and the product marketing and how you talk about things. But so many of the tools and frameworks and principles that I learned for launching a product were essentially the same as for launching a service itself. So the ways that I manage things, the way I thought about starting small and experimenting with MVPs, it was quite similar. Of course, it was different when, it's a service, and you're talking about it in a different way, but I didn't feel like they were drastically different in my product approach.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Ultimately, you are trying to solve problems for your target market audience, right?
Yep. Yep.
And, as long as you're doing that, the shape of your product, whether it's a physical item or SaaS, shouldn't really make a difference. It should still be solving those
Yeah.
problems. Really cool.
Ultimately, you're really wanting to speak to who you're trying to go after, what their pain point is, and what you can help them solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we go. What strategies do you recommend for creating a product culture with, we did this one. We did this one. So sorry.
We
So
talk about
sorry. We did
culture.
that one. We
Okay.
did. We did talk. Did you
Okay.
want to talk culture? You are welcome to. If you have more to say on culture, let's hear it. This question was creating culture within an organization where all the teams understand and contribute to the product-led growth mindset. So if you have more to say on creating that company-wide culture, please do so.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spent a lot of time, frankly, at Spotify, that we were constantly like trying new things, like rearranging, moving different teams. And I think one of the things that was really grounding that I took with me into future jobs was really identifying when you start on a new team, like ways of working, roles and responsibilities, um, and just having a way that you do things. So as a PM, a lot of times it's bring the donuts, and it's really like help set the stage. I think we as PMs, I don't think we're the CEOs, but I think culturally we really guide the ebb and flow of the team. And so I think the more you do to prepare your teams for this is how we work when things go well, this is how we work when things go awry, this is how I work and how I like to communicate versus how you might communicate. So I feel like a lot of that pre-product development work and just understanding your team in a emotionally intelligent way goes a really long way, and it allows teams to be more efficient. So that's something I feel very strongly about.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, Joy, I just want you to take a breath for a second. These questions are coming fast, and they are on so many varied topics, and you are just whacking them back as fast as I can pitch them at you. So great job. Take a breath for a second.
Thank you.
They're
Thanks,
still
Mark.
coming. They're still coming fast. Get
Yeah.
some water. Um, I've got some good ones coming in here. All right. You took a breath? You good?
Yeah,
You
I'm good.
ready?
I'm
Do we need
good.
to stand up and get the wiggles out for a second? All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Here is a good one from Troy. Many small and even mid-sized companies don't have a lot of time or budget or motivation for full-scale research projects on customer issues. What are some budget-friendly, quick and dirty, but still effective ways to gather customer issues? Any budget-friendly ways to do that customer research?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what you're looking for and what stage of your product you're at. I think one of my favorite ways when we were in a beta testing was to slap a survey at the end of it was a form essentially, like it was a product, it was a distribution product, and so at the end it was a form. It was like, rate this. And for me, it was just like a very passive way to collect feedback. People would rate things, they'd write in comments, I could email them directly. So it was like an always on approach, which was really nice. And that was like a couple lines of code to put at the end of the product experience. ChatGPT is really good for market research if you just need to really gather a lot very quickly and synthesize. I've seen that work really well in a school setting. So those are like two things that come to mind right off the bat.
Did you say in the school setting is where you've seen that
Yeah, like I think
used?
I think I've seen a lot of students utilize ChatGPT not to write their papers, but to really synthesize like big amounts of data
Yeah.
to kind of or they would do customer interviews and really synthesize those key themes. I've also seen, when people are doing customer research, just getting an AI tool to just like take notes and summarize those meetings, that's becoming more and more
Oh,
popular.
good.
And like that makes the job so much quicker, especially if you don't have like a UX researcher. Those are all great examples of like pulling in AI to be your assistant on the research side.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, oh, here's our friend Herdesh again. Thank you, Herdesh. Herdesh says, can you please give some examples of when people confuse strategy with tactics? What are best practices to avoid this? So yeah, maybe start there. Do you have thoughts on whether the product team should be strategy focused, that is, big picture forest, or tactically focused down in the trenches looking at the bark on the trees? Any difference in philosophy there, and how can we encourage the one or the other if you do?
Yeah, I mean, my interpretation of that is strategy is the what and the tactics are the how. So again, I don't think
Yeah.
it's either or. I think every team needs some kind of strategy and clear goal. And the tactics are what are the levers we're going to pull to achieve those goals.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's one or the other. And I can imagine maybe why you're asking that is because you feel like you're getting shoved into tactics rather than having a strategy.
Yeah.
Um, Not everyone needs like a 20-page product strategy, but every team needs a clear sense of alignment on the goals that they're working towards, whether it's on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis. And you need that in order to figure out what you're doing, even when that's experimentation and you don't necessarily know what direction you're going to go in. Having a goal to experiment so that you can really understand where you want to double down, where you actually want to build towards is fine. But that goal needs to be, is it growth? Is it revenue? Like some of those like North Star metrics that we talk about. So I think it's about having a strategy with a clear goal and then outlining very clear tactics with, I'm a big OKR, KPI person, that are measurable so you can really start to assess, are you working and making your way towards that goal, or are you not?
Yeah. You said one of the buzzwords there, OKRs, metrics. I know we're going to get some questions on that. Do you want to just take this opportunity to talk about maybe some of your favorite metrics to employ in this customer-based approach?
Favorite metrics. I don't know if I, I don't know if I have a favorite.
You don't have pet
I think
metrics that you
I
take
think
everywhere you go?
one thing that I love, I mean, there's, like the end customer metrics are really like those are the buzzy and fun ones, but I really like coaching people on internal tooling metrics and making those feel measurable and ambitious. And I think there's a lot of value in helping internal teams, i.e., operations, customer support, become more efficient, because that's really just
Okay.
a way to actually help your end customers as well. So I think that's like a fun sneaky metric that I like, because I think a lot of people don't understand or see value in internal tooling, but I think I love helping people make goals out
And
of the internal tooling that they're
what
doing.
does that measure specifically?
So like if you were to be helping operate building for operations teams to
Okay.
work with their customers, for example, I think looking at efficiency and like reduction in like operational time to speed up your efficiency in the business. I think that's like a really underrated one.
Wow, that is sneaky. I like that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Here is, oh, where did we go? Here we go. Here is a question. Oh, okay. Let's talk a little bit about road mapping. Any way to guarantee that you're getting reasonable timelines for roadmaps and deadlines from your executives? So maybe, yeah, we can talk a little bit about how we set launch deadlines. What should be driving those? Should it be, sort of bottom up or top down that's driving your launch deadlines? How can we work that relationship with the executives who maybe have some greater goals in mind that we
Totally.
aren't fully aware of, right? How do we best approach when we set those launch deadlines?
Yeah, I think you're going to work in places where it's top down, you're going to work in places where it's bottom up. But for me, the key piece here is as a product manager being able to fluently and confidently speak to the engineering capacity and design capacity. So being able to understand the different pieces and levers that are going to cause something to take a long time or take not a lot of time, and then being able to understand how to negotiate those things. You're going to have people saying, we want this next week. And as a PM and in partnership with, let's say, an engineering manager, it is on you to communicate what's possible, not completely what's possible, but velocity and sizing and scope, and figure out creative ways to meet those deadlines. So for me, it's about fluency in what your team is capable of and being able to chunk out that launch into different ways to provide options as a product manager. Of course, being able to offer a perspective around that, but I imagine the person asking this might not necessarily be the one deciding. So my main advice here would be really working with engineering to understand the different scope of pieces, and what is realistic so that you can have a very clear, transparent dialogue with the dates that are getting dictated down to you.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard people talk sometimes about deciding up front at the beginning of any project whether you're going to be scope driven or whether you're going to be date driven.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, are those two mutually exclusive things, or can you kind of shift midway through and say, okay, never mind the date, we're now going to expand it? Is that a healthy, productive way to function, or
I
is
mean, yeah, I mean, I think things always change. I
yeah?
think my philosophy is like, you shouldn't be building anything where it's going to take 6 months and then you're going to launch something. Like, what are ways and paths to get you into iterative launch mode, and iteratively starting to roll things out? So it's not 6 months of waiting and then it's like this big thing. And I don't necessarily mean a public launch, but I mean, even just like internal testing, getting code out the door in a more incremental way.
Oh,
Um,
so more bite-sized projects is probably step one there, right?
Yeah, because the more that you're releasing, the more you can learn about your velocity, the more you can learn about your bug and triaging process, what's actually going to happen on the ground when it comes to operations, customer support. So for me, I'm always advocating for more frequent, smaller launches, to build towards a bigger launch. And I think I've worked on teams that are both, that are scope driven, that are date driven. Nothing's ever been like, everything always changes no matter what. And so as a PM, I think having a really great command of, what's taking a while, what's not taking a while, and different levers, like I said, to pull and negotiate on is going to just give you a stronger platform to stand on when it comes to talking to leadership or sales or customers themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It seems like it takes a lot of strategy thinking up front to make sure that you've got the bigger project broken down into smaller ones that are going to build on each other up and until they equal that larger project.
Yeah.
But if you're just scattershot doing this project, that project, they're not necessarily going to all contribute to a larger accomplishment at the end. You may just be chasing your
Yeah.
tail.
Yeah. And I think so much of that is realigning and then continuing to realign on what are our P0s, what are our P1s, what are our P2s. And if you're launching iteratively,
Yeah.
those can change. So it's about constantly revisiting that conversation, constantly reprioritizing that list, really spiking those things you don't know, demystifying the biggest risk to the business, and just doing that regularly with a cross-functional team.
Yes. Brilliant. Good. Interesting question here about subject matter experts. The question was, do you think the product manager should be the subject matter expert? I mean, give us your thoughts on, or your opinions on that, but also any other thoughts that you might have on working with subject matter experts in general. Is that just one of many places to go for your market research? Should they be, consulted more often than just going to a customer? What do you think about the idea of utilizing subject matter experts in
I
your
mean,
research?
of course, if that's something that's available to you, for sure. And like I mentioned earlier, when I would do really early product discovery, bringing in a subject matter expert. So let's say at Audible, bringing in someone who is deeply familiar with the publishing side when we were thinking about distribution tools. That person is just a wealth of knowledge, not just in like the space, but in relation to the company of Audible, for example. So bringing that person into a design discovery process, totally different for them, but really, really unique insights than the design product engineering team could ever offer. So I love utilizing subject matter experts whenever I can, bringing them into the product development process. It's always fun. Like they're always like, wow, this is what you guys do. Which is great.
Which is simultaneously a compliment and insulting.
Well, they're like, man, I wish was working on a product development team. And then I think when it comes to being a subject matter expert, I don't think you need to be. I think there's definitely areas and products and tools. Like I always think about, if there's like hyper medical, products that like, or like for like insurance, where like regulations and the legal matters of things are really, really, really specific. I think it could catalyze product development, but I don't think it's insurmountable. I think like a product person can usually jump into any job. I think it just depends on like how specific, and how quickly and efficiently you want to move. I think hiring someone in that space is always going to be, a quicker onboarding process, but they might not be fully rounded as a product manager. So it kind of
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, good. Those SMEs, we love our SMEs.
sneeze.
Here is a good old anonymous. Another question from anonymous. What would be your suggestions to execute on product-led growth within a partner network, where the partners use your technology to build commercial software? So, if you are partnering with another company, I guess, yeah. How would you handle the customer-based research relationship there? If you're partnering and the partners are using your technology to build commercial software, there might be some tangles of communication to sort out there. What do you think, Jori?
Mm-hmm. Sounds really specific, but I
It
think
does, yes.
when I've collaborated, in big organizations with like an external party, I think that goal setting exercise and aligning on where we're trying to go in the short term, long term, is really, really important. I found if you don't do that, you're kind of like heading in different directions. So like really starting that relationship by understanding what are our goals? Are they aligned? Are they different? And if they're different, how do we bridge those gaps and figure out how to prioritize the tactics that we're using versus what you're using? So for me, it's really, it comes back to the product strategy and like the product goals, and really understanding those points of alignment or misalignment.
Yeah, good. Hope that one helped you there. I want to do so. I mean, obviously, we've pitched the webinar today as product led opportunities for 2024. We're coming
Mhm.
here to the end of 2023. What if we take a second here to talk about growth opportunities that we might go after in 2024. We obviously pitched a little bit to the crowd as we were starting.
Yeah.
What products did they think were going to take off in the next year? Do you have any thoughts on those growth opportunities for 2024? Maybe some trends you've got your finger on the pulse of that you're seeing that we might want to keep in mind, or any other tips or opportunities for product growth in 2024? Put your fortune teller hat on for us. What are you seeing coming up here for us? Crystal
Well,
ball.
aside from all the amazing suggestions in chat,
I know you can just read back the chat if you
I
want
can
to.
read back the chat.
That's good user research right there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of work with product managers, like just like on the ground in terms of like what I'm seeing at companies. I think from like a build perspective, I think, the market's weird. And I think product managers we're almost kind of in this converging phase where like product managers are having to wear all the hats again. That's kind of what I'm seeing, where there was this world of abundance where product managers had a project manager, a program manager, a UX writer, like they had a whole team. And I think product managers are kind of having to do a lot again. So I'm seeing that and hearing that a lot, just on the ground, because companies are cutting back and the market's super weird. I think there's a lot of buzz around what the product role is and isn't. I think I mentioned this earlier. There was a interview through Lenny's podcast where Brian Chesky from Airbnb talked about, the role of product at Airbnb and kind of doing away with certain types of functions. So I think there's like a lot of buzz around what is product management at a company anymore and what should it be. So I think like we're going to see and hear more about that too. In terms of like products themselves, I think AI is going to continue to just like, it's going to be a lot of AI still. And I would just continue to encourage people to stay engaged in it, but know and keep it on a shelf of this is an option for me. It's not just my destiny. Because I think I've seen a lot of people get really just off track from building really impactful products by thinking that building AI means just immediately creating impact.
Yeah. Yes. All right, I'm going to flip the question now. What in the future is not going to change? What are some of these just human behaviors that we encounter in the product world that will not go away, even with the presence of AI? People are still going to be people. They're still going to do this in 2024, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hope and I think that I like to think of product managers as the glue. They're not necessarily the CEO of the product, which I know was a thing a while back. And I think it caused a lot of people to kind of flock to this space. But I don't think product managers can just be replaced with AI. I think like there's a lot of emotional intelligence and glue and influencing and stakeholder management that's always going to be and make a good PM. More than your technical chops, more than your ability to fundraise. Like I think it's really about actually being able to rally a group of people, be tenacious and get them aligned and excited about something. And that's not going to go away at all.
What a beautiful description. That's why PMs are some of my favorite people. Beautiful, beautiful. Jori, how do you feel? Are you exhausted? Oh my goodness.
We're done. We could keep going for an hour.
Oh, she's ready to keep going. All
Just
right.
kidding.
Oh my goodness. Our audience may actually have to go off and do the job that we've been talking about all day today. Eventually, they're going to need to do that. I'll tell you what, we had so many questions that we were not able to
there's
get
so many
to.
to get to answer. Yeah.
Look at all of those. I'm sure that you saw some that you even wished that we'd gotten to. I'm so sorry. If folks have questions and they wanted to reach out to you, is there a place that you're comfortable sharing where they could do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. Ping me on LinkedIn, send me a DM. You can also just go to my website. It's myname.com. I have a contact form. Would love to stay in touch, hear what you're struggling with, hear what you're predicting for 2024. So feel free to reach out on my website, joribell.com, or on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Amazing. Gang, let me quickly promote the next in the product chat series. This is not happening until 2024. We are going to tie a bow on 2023, but the next one happens January 25 for a webinar that will be on the best data-driven approaches you can take to ensure you are effectively solving your market's problems and properly executing on outside-in strategies. That's what we want to do. There we go. Jori, we did it. I can't believe it. Thank you so much for making us so much smarter on these topics today. I loved it. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so nice to be here and just be knocking down some questions.
Gang, that is a wrap on webinars for 2023. Go have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you again next year. I always love saying that. Bye, everybody.
Bye.